I died twice. The first time was when my sister smiled at me sweetly and drove her car straight into mine. The second time was when I opened my eyes again and realized I wasn't dead. I was back. Back to the day that ruined everything. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and wealth. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above my head, their golden light reflecting against polished marble floors. The long dining table stretched before me like a stage, and seated across from us were the two men who would decide our fates. My fingers trembled slightly in my lap. No, not trembled, remembered, because I had been here before. Elena, sit properly. My father's stern voice cut through my thoughts. I froze. That voice, that exact tone. My heart slammed violently against my ribs as realization dawned on me like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I had returned. I slowly turned my head. Beside me sat my sister, Iris Vale. Beautiful, elegant, deadly. Her posture was perfect, her smile gentle, just like I remembered, just like the day she killed me. This time, I have to choose first. The voice echoed clearly in my head. I stiffened. That wasn't my thought. It wasn't spoken either. Slowly, I turned to look at Iris. She hadn't moved. Her expression remained soft, eyes lowered demurely. But her voice, I had heard it, inside my head. I won't let her take him again. My breath hitched. There it was again, clear, sharp, filled with determination. Iris was thinking, and I could hear it. A chill ran down my spine. Not only had I been reborn, I could hear thoughts. Across the table sat the two Hale brothers, Victor Hale and Adrian Hale. In my previous life, I hadn't understood the difference between them. Now, I knew exactly what each one was. Victor Hale, the eldest son, cold, powerful, untouchable, a man whose presence alone could suffocate a room. In my last life, Iris married him, and she suffered for it. Adrian Hale, the younger, illegitimate son, gentle, kind, attentive. At least, that's what everyone believed. That's who I married. And that belief cost me everything. Adrian is mine this time. Iris's thoughts rang out, sharp with urgency. Before I could react, she moved, gracefully, quickly. She stood, walked across the room, and sat beside Adrian. Her cheeks flushed lightly as she lowered her gaze. "Hello, my name is Iris Vale. I like you." Her voice was shy, perfect, convincing. But I heard the truth. I finally got you first. I almost laughed. "Since your sister has made her choice, Elena, you will marry Victor Hale." Silence filled the room. All eyes turned to me. Iris's thoughts came again, sharp, triumphant. "This time, you can take the beating from me." Ah, there it was. The truth. In my previous life, I believed Iris was unlucky. I believed Victor was cruel. I believed Adrian was kind. I believed I was fortunate. I was wrong. Adrian Hale was a monster, a man who smiled gently in public and tortured me in private. The loving husband who fed me poison slowly, the man who watched me suffer and enjoyed every second of it. And Iris? She envied me so much, she killed me for it. I lowered my gaze, hiding the coldness in my eyes. Then slowly, I smiled. "I understand, Father," I said calmly. "I like Victor too." Gasps echoed faintly around the room. Even Iris froze. What? Her thought cracked with confusion. I stood. Step by step, I walked toward Victor Hale. Every step felt like walking toward danger because I knew exactly what he was. Or at least, I thought I did. When I finally reached him, I sat down beside him without hesitation. The moment I did, a cold, suffocating aura wrapped around me. Victor didn't look at me, not immediately, but I could feel it, that overwhelming presence, that quiet dominance. No wonder Iris broke under him. I swallowed slightly and tried to listen. If I could hear thoughts, then I needed to know his. Silence. Nothing. I frowned slightly. Why couldn't I hear him? Just then, Adrian chuckled softly beside Iris. "You're quite bold," he said warmly. And then I heard it. What a delicate little thing. I wonder how long before she breaks. My blood ran cold. The smile on my lips froze. There it was. The truth I knew. The monster behind the mask. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed Victor's hand. Warm, solid, unexpectedly steady. Victor finally turned to look at me. His gaze was sharp, piercing, dangerous. I immediately let go. "Sorry," I said quickly. He didn't respond, but he didn't pull away either. And somehow, that was enough, because in that moment, I made my decision. This time, I would not be a victim. This time, I would not trust appearances. This time, I would take control of my own fate. Even if it meant marrying a devil. Even if it meant walking straight into danger. Even if it meant standing beside Victor Hale. Because no matter how dangerous he was still better than the snake pretending to be kind. And this time, I would win. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. Too fast. Almost as if fate was afraid I might change my mind. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, staring at the reflection that felt both familiar and foreign. The woman looking back at me was dressed in white. Elegant. Composed. Dangerous. "Elena, hurry up! Adrian is already here!" A servant's voice echoed from outside. Of course he was. Adrian Hale. Always early, always attentive, always the perfect gentleman, in front of others. I slowly lifted my gaze, meeting my own eyes in the mirror. Then, quietly, I listened. The voices came immediately. "Iris looks stunning today. Adrian Hale is so considerate. He came so early. Unlike the elder son, I heard Victor didn't even show up." I smiled faintly. So it begins, just like my previous life. Back then, I had been the one humiliated, standing alone, abandoned, judged. But not this time. I picked up my bouquet and walked out calmly, each step steady, each breath controlled. The grand hall was filled with guests, wealthy elites, business partners, socialites. Every eye turned toward me the moment I appeared, and just as expected, there he was, Adrian Hale, dressed in a pristine white suit, standing at the center like a prince. Beside him, Iris. She looked radiant, glowing, victorious. The moment her eyes met mine, her lips curled into a subtle smile. Look at you, standing there alone again. This time, no one will pity you. I tilted my head slightly and smiled back. Let her enjoy it, because very soon she would realize something was wrong. "Elena!" Iris called sweetly, her voice carrying just enough for others to hear. "Where is Victor? Didn't he come to pick you up?" A ripple of whispers spread instantly. "She's been abandoned. How embarrassing. The Hale family really doesn't care about her." I could feel their eyes on me, waiting, hungry, waiting for me to break. But I didn't. Instead, I walked forward gracefully, stopping just a few steps away from her. "No need to worry about me," I said calmly. You should focus on yourself. Her smile stiffened, just slightly. Why is she so calm? Ah, there it was. Doubt. Adrian chuckled softly, placing a hand over Iris's. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. And then, such a pretty face. I wonder how long before it's ruined. My fingers tightened slightly around my bouquet. Still the same. Still disgusting. Let's begin, the host announced. The ceremony proceeded. Vows, applause, smiles. Adrian lifted Iris into his arms, carrying her down the aisle like a devoted husband. The guests cheered, and just like before, all eyes turned to me, alone, waiting, judged. But this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I stepped forward, picked up the microphone. Everyone, I said clearly, thank you for attending today. The murmuring softened. Victor Hale had an urgent international negotiation this morning. I continued smoothly. As his wife, I will be representing him for the wedding toast. Silence. Complete silence. Then, approval. I see. That makes sense. So composed. She handled that well. I glanced toward the main table. Madame Hale was watching me, closely. Her sharp eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. Approval. Good. Very good. Behind me, Iris's thoughts exploded. Disgusting. She's stealing the spotlight again. Just wait. The tea ceremony will ruin her. My lips curved slightly. Thank you for telling me your plan. The tea ceremony began soon after. A tradition. A test. A battlefield. I carefully lifted the tea tray, walking toward Madame Hale. Each step measured, each movement precise. Behind me, I could feel Iris's gaze. Sharp, calculating. 3. I tilted the tray slightly. 2. I shifted my footing. 1. I stepped aside. A loud crash echoed through the hall. Gasps erupted instantly. I turned. Iris was on the ground. Tea spilled across her dress, her expression frozen in shock. She had fallen, exactly where I had been standing. Oh my, are you all right? I asked, my voice filled with concern. But inside, I was calm, because I already knew. She had planned to trip me, humiliate me, make me spill tea in front of everyone, just like she did in my previous life. Only this time, she fell into her own trap. Adrian quickly rushed to help her up. But what an idiot. I heard it clearly, and I smiled. The room was silent. Madame Hale's face darkened. So reckless, she said coldly. Is this how a daughter-in-law of the Hale family behaves? I'm sorry, Iris stammered. But her thoughts, why didn't it work? Because I can hear you. I lowered my gaze, hiding the amusement in my eyes. The ceremony ended awkwardly, but one thing was clear. The balance had shifted. Madame Hale turned to me instead, her expression gentle. Elena, she said, taking my hand, you've done well. I bowed my head slightly. Thank you, Mother. Behind her, Iris's nails dug into her palms. Just wait, this isn't over. That night, I finally returned to the Hale mansion, my new home, or perhaps my battlefield. The room was quiet, too quiet. No Victor. Of course, just like my previous life. I walked inside calmly, placing my veil aside. Then I waited. Hours passed. Silence. Cold. Lonely. Just like before. But this time, I didn't feel humiliated. I felt prepared. The door opened. I turned. Victor Hale stood there, tall, composed, dangerous. He loosened his tie slightly, his gaze landing on me. You're still awake, he said flatly. I was waiting, I replied. He said nothing, just walked past me, as if I didn't matter, just like the rumors said. But this time, I didn't react. Instead, I stepped forward calmly, took his jacket. "You must be tired," I said softly. For a brief moment, he paused, just a second, but I noticed. Interesting, very interesting. He disappeared into the bathroom, and I began preparing the room, the bed, the tea, the couch. When he came out, he stopped. His gaze swept across the room, then landed on me. "You're sleeping there?" he asked, nodding toward the couch. "Yes." "Why?" I met his eyes calmly. "We're strangers. Sharing a bed would be unnecessary." A pause, then a faint smirk. "You're different," he said, and for the first time, I felt it. Something shift, something dangerous. "Let's make a deal," I continued. "A partnership. We maintain appearances, but live separate lives." His gaze sharpened. "And why would I agree to that?" "Because it benefits both of us." Silence. Then, "Fine." One word. Simple, decisive. But as he walked past me, I heard it, for the first time, his voice inside my head. "Interesting." I froze. My eyes widened slightly. Wait, I could hear him now? Why now? And more importantly, why did it feel like he knew? That night, as I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, only one thought echoed in my mind. This life was already different, much more dangerous than before, and Victor Hale was no longer a man I could predict. I woke up to the sound of controlled breathing, slow, steady, rhythmic. For a moment, I didn't move. I simply lay there on the couch, eyes half open, listening. Then, a soft thud. I turned my head. Victor Hale was doing push-ups. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, casting shadows across his body. Sharp lines, controlled strength, quiet power. His movements were precise, disciplined, not a single wasted motion. So much for the rumors. "They said you were weak," I muttered unconsciously. He didn't stop. "Rumors are useful," he replied flatly. "They make people careless." I went still. Was that a coincidence? Or did he just respond to something I hadn't meant to say out loud? I pushed the thought aside. For now. Victor stood, grabbing a towel and wiping the faint sheen of sweat from his skin. His expression remained unreadable as ever. "Get ready," he said. "We're going downstairs." Of course, the first breakfast. In families like this, breakfast wasn't a meal. It was a battlefield. The Hale dining hall was already filled when we arrived. Long table, perfect arrangement, silent tension. At the head sat Madam Hale, elegant, cold, watching everything. Adrian was already there. So was Iris. The moment we stepped in, all eyes turned toward us. I felt it immediately. Iris's box. Why is she walking beside him like that? Didn't he ignore her last night? I almost smiled, but what truly caught my attention was Adrian. His gaze lingered on me for just a second too long. Then, "She looks better than I remember." A chill ran down my spine. Still the same, still watching, still calculating. "Good morning, Mother," Victor said calmly. "Good morning, Madam Hale," I followed, lowering my gaze respectfully. She nodded once. Then her eyes shifted. "Iris," she said slowly. Everyone turned. Only then did I notice. Iris was still wearing a revealing dress, bare shoulders, delicate straps, makeup slightly heavier than appropriate. Beautiful, but wrong. Dead wrong for this family. And I knew it, because in my previous life, a maid had been fired for wearing something less revealing than that. She looks stunning. Adrian likes it. That's all that matters. Iris's thoughts echoed confidently. I almost sighed. She still didn't understand. In this house, what Adrian liked meant nothing. "What are you wearing?" Madam Hale's voice cut through the room like a blade. Silence. Iris froze. "Mother, she started. "Shameless," Madam Hale interrupted coldly. The word hit harder than a slap. In this house, she continued, we maintain dignity, not display. Iris's face paled. I didn't know, she whispered, but her thoughts. This old woman? Before she could even finish that thought, crack! The sound echoed sharply. Madam Hale's cane struck the table. Do not test my patience, she said. Iris trembled. Adrian reached out, gently holding her hand. Mother, he said smoothly, it was my fault. I told her I liked it. Such a caring husband, such a convincing act, but serves you right. I heard it clearly. My fingers curled slightly under the table. Disgusting. Then you are equally at fault, Madam Hale replied coldly. Adrian lowered his gaze. I accept punishment. Of course he did. Always the perfect son, always the obedient one. But I knew. He didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. Sit, Madam Hale finally said. We all took our seats. The atmosphere remained tense. I picked up my chopsticks calmly, and then Victor placed food onto my plate, just like that. No explanation, no hesitation. I paused, then smiled slightly. Thank you, husband. The word felt strange, but necessary. Madam Hale noticed, and for the first time, her expression softened. Good, very good. Across the table, Iris's thoughts burned. Why is he treating her like that? He never did that for me. Because he wasn't your man, but I said nothing. After breakfast, Madam Hale continued, Elena will follow Victor to the company. The table stilled. Even Adrian looked up. Iris's reaction was immediate. What? She blurted, then quickly covered her mouth. Too late. You have something to say? Madam Hale asked coldly. No, Mother. Iris forced a smile. But her thoughts. Why does she get that opportunity? I should be the one going. I lowered my gaze. In my previous life, this same opportunity had been given to her, and she said, I don't need to work. I can just rely on my husband. She gave up power and ended up with nothing. But this time, I wouldn't make that mistake. I will do my best to learn, I said calmly. Madam Hale nodded. Good. Simple, but decisive. After breakfast, Victor and I left together. The moment we stepped outside, I felt it. Iris's gaze burning into my back, and her thoughts. Just wait, I'll take everything from you again. I stopped walking for a second, then smiled. Try. The car ride was silent. Victor sat beside me, reviewing documents. Focused, detached. I tried again, listening, but nothing. Silence. His mind was completely closed, unreachable, which made one thing clear. He wasn't normal. Why did you agree? He suddenly asked. I blinked. To what? To going to the company? I turned slightly, meeting his gaze. Because I don't want to rely on anyone, I said honestly. A pause, then, liar. My heart skipped. That was his thought. I heard it, clear, sharp. I slowly looked at him, but his expression hadn't changed, not even slightly. Was he testing me? Or did he just respond to something I hadn't meant to say out loud? I pushed the thought aside. For now. Victor stood, grabbing a towel and wiping the faint sheen of sweat from his skin. His expression remained unreadable as ever. Good answer, he said aloud. But his thoughts, let's see how long you can keep this up. I looked away, and for the first time, I felt it. Excitement. Not fear, not dread, but something dangerous. This game was no longer between me and Iris. Victor Hale was playing too, and somehow I had the feeling he had been playing much longer than I had. As the car pulled into the company building, one thought echoed in my mind. This wasn't just a second chance. This was a war. And this time, I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. The Hale Corporation Tower pierced the sky like a blade. Cold, untouchable, dominant. I stepped out of the car beside Victor, my heels clicking softly against the polished ground. Employees moved quickly around us, heads lowered, voices hushed. Respect, fear, power. Everything about this place screamed one thing. Victor Hale ruled here. Stay close, he said without looking at me. I didn't argue, because I understood. This wasn't a place for mistakes. The moment we entered, silence spread. Good morning, Mr. Hale. Good morning, madam. Madam. The word felt strange, but useful. I nodded slightly, observing everything, every glance, every reaction, every hidden intention. And then, that's the new Mrs. Hale? She looks harmless, pretty, but probably useless. I smiled faintly. Good. Underestimate me. It makes things easier. Victor led me into his office. Minimalist, sharp, efficient. Wait here, he said. Then he walked out. No explanation, no instructions. Just left me. I sat down slowly and listened. Footsteps, voices, whispers. Then, this deal will be easy. The Hale family is desperate for expansion. I'll overprice it and they won't even notice. My eyes narrowed. Interesting. Curious, I stood up quietly and walked toward the glass wall. Through it, I saw the conference room. Victor was inside. Across from him sat a foreign businessman, confident, relaxed, too relaxed, and I could hear him clearly. This formula isn't worth much, maybe a few 100,000 at best, but I'll sell it for millions. I didn't hesitate. I pushed the door open. The room went silent. Victor looked up, his gaze sharp, unreadable. The businessman frowned slightly. Who is this? He asked. I smiled politely. Elena Hale, I said, his wife. Recognition flashed in his eyes. Ah, so he knew the name. Good. I walked forward calmly, picking up the sample products from the table. A skincare serum. I turned it slowly in my hand. May I asked. Victor didn't answer, but he didn't stop me either. Permission granted. I understand you're offering this formula for $3 million, I said, glancing at the man. He smiled confidently. Yes, it's a revolutionary product. It's not. Silence. Complete silence. Even Victor's pen stopped moving. The man's smile stiffened. I beg your pardon? I set the bottle down gently. This formula only focuses on surface-level brightening. No anti-aging, no skin repair, no long-term benefits. His expression darkened. As a businessman, I added, you should know that modern consumers want results, not illusions. The room grew tense, but inside his mind, how does she know that? I smiled, because I could hear you. Then what do you propose? Victor finally spoke. His voice was calm, neutral, but I felt it. He was watching me, testing me. I raised one finger. 1 million. The businessman scoffed. That's absurd. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said softly. What's absurd is expecting us to pay 3 million for something worth far less. His jaw tightened. She's ruining this. Good. Let's ruin it properly. Actually, I continued, my voice even softer now, I'll offer you something else. Both men looked at me. 10,000. Silence exploded. 10,000, he snapped. I met his gaze calmly. Yes. He stood up abruptly. This is insulting. Of course it is, because you came here to scam us. If you're not interested, he continued angrily, then I'll take my business elsewhere. He turned to leave. And then, stop. Victor's voice cut through the room. Cold, commanding. The man froze. I'll give you 1 million. Sign the contract. I turned sharply to him. What? Why? That made no sense. The man's eyes lit up instantly. Of course, Mr. Hale. And, Victor added, his gaze shifting slightly toward me, you will apologize to my wife. The room went still again. The man hesitated, then forced a stiff smile. My apologies, Mrs. Hale. I didn't respond, because I was still thinking, why would he? The contract was signed. The deal was done, and the moment we were alone, I turned to him. That formula isn't worth 1 million, I said directly. I know. I blinked. You know? He leaned back slightly, watching me. What I bought, he said calmly, was not the formula. A pause. Then, the brand. Silence. Then, it clicked. Everything. The confidence, the pricing, the negotiation, The man wasn't selling a product, he was selling influence, recognition, trust, and Victor had seen it from the start. You noticed too, he added quietly. It wasn't a question. I smiled slightly. I had a feeling. Half truth. His gaze lingered on me longer than before. Interesting. There it was again. His thoughts, clear, deliberate, almost like he wanted me to hear them. You're not as simple as you look. Neither are you, I replied. Silence. Then, a faint smirk. Tell me, he continued, what do you want? Straight to the point. I liked that. I want to run one of your branch companies. No hesitation, no fear. His eyes narrowed slightly. Ambitious. I prefer capable, I corrected. A pause. Then, you think you can handle it? I met his gaze steadily. Yes. Silence stretched between us, heavy, evaluating, dangerous. Then, fine. One word, but this time it meant everything. You'll learn under me first, he added. Then we'll see. I nodded. That was enough. For now. As I walked out of his office later that day, I felt it. A shift. Not just in him, but in everything. This life was no longer following the same path, and Victor Hale was no longer just a cold husband. He was watching me, testing me, and maybe, just maybe, respecting me. But across the city, in another office, Iris Vale clenched her fists tightly. Why is everything going wrong? Beside her, Adrian smiled gently, but inside, it's time to speed things up. A shadow moved behind them, unnoticed, unseen. And in that moment, the game changed again, because this wasn't just about rivalry anymore. It was becoming something far more dangerous, a trap, a deadly one. And this time, everyone was playing to kill. 3 days later, Victor asked me out. It was unexpected. Dinner, he said simply that morning, adjusting his cufflinks. No business, just attend. Just attend? I almost laughed. Nothing about Victor Hale was ever just anything. Still, I agreed, because instinct told me this wasn't random. It was a move. And in this house, every move meant something. The restaurant was the most luxurious in the city. Crystal lighting, live piano, private dining sections, the kind of place where power dressed itself as elegance. Victor walked in first. I followed closely beside him, and just like always, attention followed. Mr. Hale, good evening. I smiled politely, playing my role perfectly. Until I saw them. Iris and Adrian. Of course, they were seated near the center, as if deliberately placing themselves where they could be seen. Iris was leaning forward, carefully cutting Adrian's steak, her movements soft, attentive, the perfect wife. The moment she saw us, she froze, then quickly stood. Sister, she started, then corrected herself. Brother, sister-in-law. Her smile was tight. Why are they here? Of all places. No, I won't lose face. I almost smiled. Too late. You already are. Yes, I said calmly. Victor and I came for dinner. I stepped closer, and without hesitation, looped my arm through Victor's. He paused, just slightly, but he didn't pull away. Good. Adrian stepped forward quickly. Brother, he grated warmly. Sister-in-law. Victor didn't even look at him. Instead, he guided us past them. Table, he said to the waiter. Dismissed. Just like that. I could feel Iris's gaze burning into my back. Why is he treating her like that? He never ignored me like this. Because he never cared about you. Dinner had barely begun when I excused myself. I'll be back, I said, standing. Victor nodded once, but as I walked away, I felt it, that familiar presence, waiting. Iris was standing outside the restroom, her expression no longer gentle. It was cold, sharp, almost unrecognizable. You must be getting beaten behind closed doors, she said immediately. No greeting, no pretense, just poison. I leaned slightly against the wall. Is that what you want to believe? I asked calmly. She stepped closer. You think you don't know? She sneered. Victor Hale, cold, distant, cruel. Her eyes scanned me from toe to toe. Then, a smile. He must have left marks. I almost laughed, still living in the past, still believing the same lies. My turn, I said softly. Her smile faltered. I reached out slightly, gesturing toward her arm. What happened here? I asked. Her body stiffened instantly. Just for a second, but I saw it, and more importantly, I heard it. Don't look at it. Don't let her see. Needle marks. Faint, but there. Repeated. Interesting. Very interesting. It's nothing, she snapped quickly, covering her arm, then leaned closer. Not that you'd understand. Adrian actually wants me. Her lips curved into a smile. Unlike you, I doubt Victor has even touched you. There it was, her weapon, comparison, desperation disguised as superiority. That's wonderful, I said with a bright smile. She blinked, caught off guard. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. Silence. Then, rage. Pure, explosive. You. Her hand shot forward, grabbing my hair, hard. Pain shot through my scalp as she yanked violently. You think you're better than me? She snapped. Her voice cracked. Not with anger, with fear. I frowned slightly. Same mistake, same impulsivity. She never learns. Iris, I said quietly, let go. She pulled harder. Say it, she demanded. Say you're suffering. Footsteps, fast, heavy. Before I could move, a force slammed into her. She was thrown backward, crashing onto the floor. A sharp gasp escaped her. Victor stood there, tall, still, terrifying. His presence filled the entire space. Disrespecting your sister-in-law. Do you know the punishment? The air froze. Iris's face turned pale instantly because she knew. We both did. The underground cell. Dark, cold, infested. A place no one wanted to go. Brother, I didn't, she stammered. But Victor didn't look at her, not even once. Instead, he turned to Adrian. Handle it. 2 words. That was all. Adrian froze, then nodded. Yes, brother. But inside, damn it, useless woman, why can't she control herself? He grabbed Iris's arm roughly. Let's go, he said. She struggled. Adrian, wait! But he didn't stop, didn't hesitate, didn't defend her, because he never cared. As they disappeared, silence returned. Victor turned to me, his gaze scanning my face, my hair, my expression. Are you hurt? He asked. I blinked. No? He stepped closer. Too close. His hand lifted slightly, then stopped, as if hesitating, then dropped. I'll deal with this, he said. And just like that, he walked away. I stood there, alone, heart steady, mind clear. But something had changed. Again. Because this time, Victor didn't just protect me. He acted without hesitation. And that meant one thing. I was no longer just a partner. I was becoming important. That night, back at the Hale mansion, I heard it. Servants whispering, the second madam has been taken to the underground cell. I paused, then continued walking, slowly, calmly. In my room, I sat by the window, watching the darkness outside. And then, a thought echoed in my mind. Clear, cold, terrifying. Next time, I won't miss. I froze. That voice wasn't Iris. It wasn't Adrian either. Slowly, I turned my head toward the door. And for the first time, I realized something. There was someone else playing this game. Someone hidden, watching, waiting. And unlike the others, they weren't making mistakes. They were patient, deadly, and they had just made their first move. By the time the sun rose over the vast grounds of the Kingsley estate, I was already awake. Sleep had become a luxury I could no longer afford. Not when I knew exactly what kind of people I was living with. Not when I knew that danger wasn't coming, it was already here. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the sleeve of my cream-colored blouse, my expression calm, composed, controlled. But inside, I was calculating every move, every word, every breath. Because this time, I wasn't just surviving, I was playing the game, and I intended to win. "Ma'am, breakfast is ready." I turned at the soft knock on the door and nodded. "Tell them I'm coming." As the maid left, I took one last look at my reflection. Aurelia Vance, eldest daughter-in-law of the Kingsley family, future businesswoman, and the woman who would never die at the hands of her sister again. The dining hall was already filled when I arrived. At the head of the table sat Mrs. Kingsley, regal as ever, her sharp eyes missing nothing. To her right, Lucian Kingsley, cold, composed, untouchable. And to her left, Celine Vance, my dear sister, looking fragile, looking obedient, looking like the perfect victim, if only they knew. The moment I stepped in, Celine's gaze flicked to me, and just like that, her thoughts poured into my mind. She looks too calm. What is she planning? I smiled sweetly as I took my seat beside Lucian. "Relax, sister," I thought silently. "You should be more worried about yourself." "Good morning," Mrs. Kingsley said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Good morning, Mother," I replied smoothly. Celine followed a second later. "Good morning, Mother." Lucian said nothing. He never did, unless necessary. But his presence alone was enough to silence the room. Breakfast began quietly. Utensils clinked softly against porcelain. Servants moved with precision. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. And that's when I heard it. Did she notice? My gaze didn't move, but my attention sharpened. Celine. The tea. Did she notice anything strange? My fingers paused for just a second before continuing as if nothing had happened. Tea. Interesting. Very interesting. I reached for the teapot, pouring myself a cup with steady hands. Then, without hesitation, I switched it, just slightly, barely noticeable, but enough. Celine's eyes flickered. Wait, did she just... I took a slow sip, unbothered, unharmed, and then I smiled. "You're not eating much," I said gently, turning to her. Celine stiffened. I'm not very hungry." Why isn't she drinking the tea? Because I already knew, darling. Because I could hear you. Lucian suddenly placed a piece of meat onto my plate. "Eat." His tone was flat, commanding. I blinked, slightly surprised. "Thank you." Celine's thoughts immediately sharpened. Why is he treating her like that? He never... Ah, jealousy. Already? How predictable. After breakfast, Mrs. Kingsley set down her cup. "Aurelia," she called. "Yes, Mother?" "You'll be accompanying Lucian to the company today." Celine's head snapped up. "What?" She quickly covered it with a cough. "I mean, that's wonderful. Why her? It should be me." Mrs. Kingsley didn't even glance at her. "As the eldest daughter-in-law, it's time you start learning the business." I nodded calmly. "I understand." Inside, I smiled. This was it. The opportunity Celine had thrown away in her past life. The opportunity that changed everything. The drive to the company was silent. Lucian sat beside me, scrolling something on his phone. Unbothered, uninterested, unreadable. I glanced at him briefly, and then I tried again to hear his thoughts. Nothing. Still nothing. It was like trying to read a locked book. Frustrating, mysterious, dangerous. "Stop staring." His voice cut through the silence. I blinked. I wasn't staring. You were. I sighed lightly. You're very observant. He didn't respond, but I caught the faintest shift in his expression, almost like amusement. Almost. When we arrived, the Kingsley Corporation towered above the city like a symbol of power. We stepped inside, and immediately, all eyes were on us. "Good morning, Mr. Kingsley." "Good morning, ma'am." The respect was obvious. The fear, even more so. Lucian led me straight to his office. "Wait here," he said, already turning away. And just like that, he was gone. I stood there for a moment, then exhaled. Slowly. This place, this was where everything changed in my past life, where power was gained, where enemies were made, where secrets were buried. Voices echoed faintly from the hallway. The deal has to go through today. Mr. Kingsley won't accept anything less than... I stepped closer to the glass door, and then I heard it, clear as day. These fools, this product isn't worth half the price. My eyes narrowed. Another mind, another opportunity. Without hesitation, I opened the door. The conference room fell silent. Lucian sat at the head of the table. Across from him, a foreign businessman, confident, smiling, scheming. I walked in as if I belonged. "Good morning." Lucian's gaze flicked to me, sharp, questioning, but he didn't stop me. I picked up the product on the table, a sleek bottle of skincare serum, examined it, turned it slightly, and then I smiled. "This isn't worth your asking price." The room froze. The businessman blinked. "I beg your pardon?" I met his eyes calmly. "You're selling branding, not quality." His expression shifted, just slightly, but I saw it, because I wasn't just looking, I was listening. How does she know that? Lucian leaned back in his chair, watching me, interested. "Your formula lacks depth. It's surface level, temporary results, nothing sustainable." The man's confidence wavered, just a little, and that was enough. "I'll offer you less," I said. He laughed. "Nonsense." But inside, she's right. Lucian finally spoke. "Continue." Just one word, but it was permission. I raised a finger. 1 million. The man hesitated. Lucian didn't react. Then I lowered my hand slightly. "Actually, 10,000. Silence. Pure silence. The man stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." He turned to leave, exactly as expected. "Sit down." Lucian's voice was calm, but commanding. The man froze. "I'll give you 1 million, and you'll apologize." The man turned slowly, confused, relieved, greedy. "All right, deal." As contracts were signed, I stood there quietly, watching, thinking, learning. Later, when we were alone, I finally spoke. That product wasn't worth it. Lucian sipped his coffee. "I know." I blinked. "Then why?" I bought the brand. My breath caught slightly. "Ah, of course. You see what others don't," he added. His gaze met mine. Sharp, piercing. "You make me useful." Useful. Not valued, not trusted, just useful. I smiled anyway, because that was enough. For now. But as we left the office later that day, I felt it. That shift, that change. Celine had made her first move, and now, so had I. The game had officially begun. The moment we stepped back into the Kingsley estate, I felt it. That shift in the air. Subtle. Dangerous. Like something unseen had already been set into motion. Celine was waiting. Of course she was. She stood in the grand living room, dressed elegantly in a soft lilac gown, her makeup flawless, her posture perfect. To anyone else, she looked like the ideal daughter-in-law. But I knew better, and more importantly, I could hear better. They're back. Good. Tonight has to work. My steps slowed just slightly. So, it was tonight. "Aurelia, Lucian," she greeted sweetly, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "Welcome back." Lucian didn't respond. He simply walked past her, his expression indifferent. I, however, paused, smiled. "How thoughtful of you to wait." Her smile tightened. "Acting again. Just wait." "Dinner is ready," she continued, glancing toward the dining hall. "Elias and I prepared it ourselves." Elias. The name alone sent a cold wave through my chest, because unlike Celine, he was harder to predict, harder to read, and far more dangerous. We entered the dining hall together. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The table was filled with dishes, rich, fragrant, carefully plated. Candles flickered softly. Wine glasses gleamed under the chandelier. A picture of harmony. A lie. Elias Kingsley stood at the far end, leaning casually against the table. His eyes immediately found mine. And then I heard it. "Still as beautiful as ever. Such a waste she isn't mine." My stomach turned. Disgust. Cold. Sharp. "Brother," he greeted Lucian with an easy smile. "Sister-in-law." Lucian nodded once, nothing more. Celine quickly stepped forward, pulling out a chair. "Aurelia, sit here." I did, calmly, gracefully, as if I hadn't already heard everything they were planning. As the meal began, I didn't touch the food. Not yet. Not until I was sure. Did she notice? Celine's thoughts were restless, anxious, excited. No, she wouldn't. She never did before. Before. That word again. A reminder. A warning. Elias poured wine into Lucian's glass, then mine. His movements smooth, practiced, careful. Just a little. Not enough to taste. My fingers tightened under the table. There it was. I glanced at Lucian. He picked up his glass without hesitation. Calm, unbothered, completely unaware. Or pretending to be. My heart started to race. I reached under the table and grabbed his hand. Hard. He paused. Just for a second. His eyes flicked to mine. "What?" His voice was low, flat. "Don't drink it," I whispered, barely audible. Celine's thoughts spiked instantly. Did she? No, impossible. Lucian didn't move, didn't react. And then he lifted the glass and drank. My breath caught. No, 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 no. Lucian! Too late. Celine's lips curled slightly. Elias leaned back, satisfied. Done. The room felt like it was closing in. My nails dug into my palm, my mind racing. Why? Why didn't he listen? And then Lucian set the glass down calmly, unaffected. My thoughts stumbled. What? Celine frowned slightly. Why isn't it working? Elias straightened, confused. That should have... And then, suddenly, Celine's body swayed. Her eyes widened. Her hand flew to the table. Elias! He turned toward her just as his own expression twisted. What? Both of them collapsed. At the same time. Silence. Heavy. Shocking. Unreal. The door slammed open. Mrs. Kingsley entered, her cane striking the floor sharply. Her expression, furious. I knew it. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Guards rushed in immediately, grabbing Celine, grabbing Elias. Take them, she ordered coldly, to the underground cell. Celine struggled weakly. No, Mother, please, this is a misunderstanding. But Mrs. Kingsley didn't even look at her. Poisoning your own family? She said sharply. You should be grateful I'm sparing your lives. Elias said nothing, but I heard him, clear, cold. Damn it. They were dragged away, just like that, and I stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Slowly, I turned to Lucian. He was watching me, calm, collected, almost amused. My voice came out softer than I expected. You knew? He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. I installed cameras, he said simply, the moment you told me something was wrong. My breath caught. So, he had believed me. He switched the drinks, he continued. I switched them back. I stared at him, my heart still racing. You let them drink it? They made their choice. His tone was indifferent, as if it meant nothing, and maybe to him, it didn't. Then his gaze shifted, softened just slightly. But you, he added quietly, you looked scared. I froze. I wasn't. You were. His voice dropped, lower, closer. For me. My heart skipped. I started quickly. Didn't want trouble. If something happened to you, it would affect... Stop. One word, sharp. And suddenly, he was closer, much closer. His hand lifted, brushing lightly against my wrist. Aurelia, he said softly, do you always lie this badly? My breath hitched. I'm not lying. He leaned in slightly, close enough where I could feel his breath. Then tell me the truth. My thoughts scattered, my heart unsteady. Because the truth was, I was scared. Not because I needed him, not because I loved him, but because, for the first time in both lives, someone had chosen to stand on my side. I hesitated. Didn't want you to die. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not cold, not distant, but real. Good. And for some reason, that single word made my heart beat even faster. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't sleep. Celine was gone. Elias was gone. The two people who had ruined my past life, locked away, defeated. So why? Why did it feel like this was only the beginning? And more importantly, why did I feel like the most dangerous person in this house wasn't them, but the man sleeping in the room next to me, Lucian Kingsley, the man I still couldn't read, the man who could outplay everyone, including me. And for the first time in my rebirth, I wasn't sure if I was in control anymore. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Too quiet. Celine and Elias were gone, locked beneath layers of stone, steel, and silence. And yet, I couldn't relax. I stood by the window in my room, watching the early morning mist crawl across the Kingsley estate like a living thing. Everything looked peaceful, perfect, but I knew better. Peace in this house was never real. It was always the calm before something worse. Aurelia, you really think you've won? Celine's voice echoed in my memory, not from the present, but from before. From that moment, right before she killed me. I shut my eyes briefly, exhaled, slowly. No, I whispered to myself, this isn't over, because it never was. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Ma'am, a servant said from outside, Madam is requesting your presence. Of course she was. I straightened my posture, smoothing out my dress before stepping out. If there was one thing I had learned, it was that in this house, appearances mattered just as much as power. Sometimes even more. Mrs. Kingsley was already seated in the main hall when I arrived. Her cane rested beside her, her posture upright, her expression unreadable. Lucian stood beside her, as always, silent, composed, watching. You called for me, Mother, I asked respectfully. Her gaze settled on me, sharp, evaluating. Aurelia, she began slowly, you handled yourself well yesterday. I lowered my head slightly. Thank you, Mother. She studied me for a moment longer. Then, you knew something was wrong. It wasn't a question. Yes? How? I paused, just for a second, because I couldn't tell her the truth. I had a feeling, I said calmly. Their behavior was unusual. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press further. Instinct is valuable, she said finally, especially in this family. I nodded. From today onward, she continued, you will officially take over the management of one of our branch companies. My breath stilled. This was faster than I expected. Celine had begged for this opportunity in my past life, and yet she had thrown it away. I understand, I replied, my voice steady. Mrs. Kingsley leaned back slightly. Do not disappoint me. I won't. There was a pause. Then, Aurelia, Lucian's voice. I looked up. His gaze was on me, intense, unreadable. Come with me. His office felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just him. The door closed behind us with a soft click, and suddenly, it was just the two of us. Silence stretched between us. Then, you lied. The words were simple, flat, but they hit harder than anything else. My fingers tightened slightly at my sides. I don't know what you mean. Lucian walked closer, slow, measured. You didn't have a feeling, he said. You knew. My heart skipped. I don't. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head slightly to meet his gaze. Don't insult my intelligence. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. I held his gaze, refused to look away. And if I did, I said quietly, something flickered in his eyes. Interest. Then I want to know how. Of course he did. Lucian Kingsley was not the kind of man who ignored anomalies. He dissected them, understood them, controlled them. And right now, I was the anomaly. I can't tell you, I said finally. His expression didn't change. But I can help you, I continued. I can see things others don't. Predict things before they happen. A pause. And you expect me to just accept that? No, I said simply. I expect you to use it. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Soft, low, dangerous. You're either very brave, he leaned in slightly, or very foolish. Maybe both. His gaze lingered on me, longer than necessary. Then, fine. One word, but it changed everything. You'll work under me, he said. For now. I nodded. That's fair. But understand this, he added, his voice dropping slightly. If you ever turn that ability against me, his hand lifted, lightly brushing against my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze fully. I won't hesitate. A threat. Clear. Undeniable. But I didn't flinch. Then don't give me a reason to. For a moment, we just stood there. Two people, both dangerous, both hiding things, both testing each other. Then he let go. Get ready, he said, turning away. We're going to the branch office. The branch company was smaller than the main headquarters, but no less important. As soon as we arrived, I could feel it. The tension, the uncertainty, the silent judgment. That's her? She doesn't look like much. Just another rich wife. I almost smiled. If only they knew. Lucian didn't introduce me, didn't explain. He simply walked in, and everyone fell silent. This is Aurelia, he said. She'll be managing this branch from now on. Shock rippled through the room. But sir, one of the managers started. Lucian didn't even look at him. If there's a problem, you can leave. Silence. Absolute. No one spoke again. Good. I stepped forward. Nice to meet you all, I said with a polite smile. I look forward to working with you. She's smiling, but why does it feel like a warning? Because it was. Hours passed. Meetings, reports, numbers, decisions. And through it all, I listened. Not just to what they said, but to what they thought. We can hide this from her. She won't notice the missing funds. Just act normal. I almost laughed. By the end of the day, 3 people had been dismissed, 2 investigations had been opened, and 1 major deal had been renegotiated. The office was in chaos, and I was finally in control. That evening, as we drove back, Lucian glanced at me. "You work fast." "I don't like wasting time." A pause. "They won't trust you." "I don't need them to." Another pause. Then, "You're dangerous." I turned to him slightly. "So are you." For a moment, something shifted. Not hostility, not suspicion, recognition. When we got home, I felt it immediately. That same tension, that same heaviness. Something was wrong, very wrong. And then, a voice. "Welcome back, sister-in-law." My body went still. Slowly, I turned, and there, standing in the middle of the living room, was Celine, smiling. But this time, her smile wasn't desperate or fragile. It was calm, confident, terrifying. "Did you miss me?" My heart dropped, because I realized she had changed, and whatever happened to her in that underground cell had made her even more dangerous than before. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. Celine stood there, perfectly composed, her posture elegant, her smile gentle, almost serene. But I knew that smile. It wasn't softness. It wasn't innocence. It was calculation. "Did you miss me, sister?" Her voice slid into my mind like silk over a blade. Smooth, deadly. My fingers curled slightly at my sides. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not yet. Not this soon. Beside me, Lucian stopped walking. I didn't need to look at him to feel the shift in his presence. Colder, sharper, more alert. "Mother released you?" he asked flatly. Celine lowered her gaze just slightly. "Yes, brother." Her voice was obedient, soft, perfect. But inside, for now, I swallowed slowly. Something was wrong, very wrong. "Elias?" Lucian asked. Celine's lashes fluttered. "He's still being punished." A lie. Or maybe not entirely, but either way, it didn't matter, because the real danger wasn't Elias anymore. It was her. She turned to me. Her smile deepened. "Sister-in-law, I've missed you." I met her gaze, smiled just as sweetly. "I'm sure you have. You won't be smiling for long." I tilted my head slightly. "Try me." Her pupils shrank for just a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Good. Let her know. Let her realize she wasn't the only one who came back stronger. Dinner that night was different. Too quiet. Too controlled. Celine served the dishes herself, moving gracefully, carefully, like she had done this 1,000 times. And maybe, in another life, she had. "I made your favorite," she said softly, placing a dish in front of Lucian. He didn't touch it. "I'm not hungry." Simple, dismissive. Celine's smile didn't falter, but her thoughts did. Still cold, just like before. Then, but not for long. I watched her closely, every movement, every breath. She wasn't rushing anymore, wasn't impulsive, wasn't reckless. She was patient now, and that made her infinitely more dangerous. After dinner, I stepped out onto the balcony. I needed air, space, distance. The night was cool, quiet, too quiet. "You seem tense." I didn't turn. I didn't need to. "Lucian." He stepped beside me, his presence grounding in a way I hadn't expected. "She's different." I know. I finally looked at him. "You released her." It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it. "She's more useful outside than locked away." My chest tightened. Useful? Yes. His gaze shifted toward the dark garden below. She'll make a move. And you're waiting for it? Yes. I stared at him. You're using her as bait. And are you not? He countered calmly. Silence. Because he was right. I had already started playing my own game. You're risking too much, I said quietly. No, he replied. I'm controlling it. His confidence was terrifying because men like Lucian Kingsley didn't lose. But when they did, everything burned with them. The next morning, Celine came to find me. She entered my office at the branch company without knocking, bold, confident. She wants to work here, she said simply. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. You, she nodded. I want to learn. I want to destroy everything you built. I smiled slowly. Of course you do. By noon, she was officially an intern, and by evening, I'd already confirmed what I suspected. Celine wasn't just playing a game anymore. She was planning something far bigger, because this time, her thoughts weren't chaotic or emotional. They were structured, precise. Step 1, gain her trust. Step 2, get close to the company's operations. Step 3, her thoughts paused briefly, and then kill them both. My stomach tightened. Both. Me and Lucian. That night, I made my decision. If Celine wanted to play smart, then I would play smarter. I found Elias in the East Wing. He wasn't supposed to be there, but rules had never applied to him. He was leaning against the wall, casually smoking, like he hadn't just been locked in an underground cell days ago. When he saw me, he smiled. Slow. Dangerous. Well, if it isn't my favorite sister-in-law. I forced the calm expression. I need to talk to you. His brows lifted slightly. Do you now? I stepped closer, lowered my voice. Celine is planning to kill you. Silence. Then he laughed. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything, I said calmly. I'm just telling you the truth. His smile faded slightly. She wouldn't dare. I cut in softly. She would. You know how she is. His jaw tightened. She hates you, I continued, and she's afraid of you. That's true. And people like her, I leaned in slightly, they destroy what they fear. A long pause. Then he laughed again, but this time it wasn't amused. It was dark. Interesting, he murmured. Then his gaze locked on mine. And what do you get out of this? I smiled faintly. Survival. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Two liars, two manipulators, two people who would betray anyone to stay alive. Then he nodded. Fine, he said. I'll play along. As I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me, and his thoughts. This just got a lot more interesting. Back in my room that night, I sat on the edge of the bed, silent, still, because I knew what I had just done. I had lit a match and thrown it into a room full of gasoline. Celine, Elias, Lucian, 3 monsters, and now they were all moving, all plotting, all waiting. And me? I was standing right in the middle of it all, smiling, because this time I wasn't the victim. I was the one pulling the strings.